Let's talk to Dr Alan Mendoza now from the Henry Jackson Society, because I don't think there's very much doubt in anybody's mind about who is to blame for the coronavirus. It came from China. It was, depending on who you believe, started in a wet market or in a laboratory, one of the two. And Dr Alan Mendoza will tell us that lots of people would like to see something being done about it. Alan, a very good afternoon to you, I should say.
Yeah, we've crossed the divide. Good afternoon, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that started to take hold a few weeks ago, didn't it? Where people were starting to get a little browned off, shall we say, by the fact that this virus, which has gone around the world in record time and infected, millions of people, killed millions of people, all came from one place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, we have a reality here. What could have been a local outbreak of a particularly nasty virus turned into a global pandemic solely because of the way that the Chinese authorities were negligent and then hid information and didn't tell the world about what was really going on. Those
Yes.
crucial early days mattered. It meant that people could spread the disease. They could go not only internally in China, but of course, crucially, they could travel around the world. And there's no doubt that that incubation period is what has caused this pandemic now.
Yeah, absolutely right. And as far as the World Health Organization's role in it, did you get a chance to test people's opinions on that as well?
Not yet. We haven't done actually a poll on the World Health Organization, but I think that debate is live about, obviously, the role the WHO played in those early days when they uncritically took Chinese information at face value and parroted it out without any form of checks or balances to work out whether the Chinese were being truthful or not about this. And that is a real stain on the WHO's reputation and shows you the need for organizations, even critical ones, to be reformed, and why we can never accept at face value that an organization is good simply for existing.
Yes, exactly right. So tell us a bit about the survey and what people said.
Yeah, it's very interesting to look at people's views on it. We asked a number of questions, obviously, and try to be fair in terms of looking at some of the causes. So I think we started off with a very simple, do you believe the Chinese government is to blame for allowing COVID-19 to spread? And 74% of British adults agreed with that statement, either very strongly or strongly. Then the most interesting one, in my view, is that 71% of British public would support our government suing China in international courts if it became evident that China was indeed negligent or had covered things up in this respect. That's a massive figure if you think about it. I'd say over 2/3 of the public who want us to take strong action against China in that particular context.
Yes. Sorry, go on.
Well, we also, of course, over 80% of the public wants us to demand an international inquiry into the response of the Chinese authorities. So people really want to see that happen and for us to play a part in pushing for it. 45%, interestingly, the public believe that the Chinese government is mainly to blame for the damage caused in the UK by coronavirus. Now, we did ask them, do you think the British government is to blame as well in the context of that question? Only 15% put the UK government ahead of the Chinese government in that respect. A number, though, did go for a shared approach in that. But it's interesting that the full 45 believe that the reason we are suffering today is because of what the Chinese have done.
Yes, exactly right. So what chance do you think there is, though, Alan, for something to happen here? We were talking earlier to a journalist down in Sydney, Australia, because their foreign minister has also similarly asked for some kind of inquiry into what happened and why it took so long for China to admit that there was a problem. What can we actually do? Because I know there's people in America who are talking about suing the Chinese government. And I suppose you could sue them in a court of law in the US. But, would that do any good?
Well, yeah, there are various ways you can go about this. You can take the route that Americans have in the past done, which is go for these class action lawsuits. And there is one currently underway, which has got a multiplicity of actors who want to sue China. So you've got the federal sort of approach in the US. You can do it on an international level. I think what the Australians would like is some sense of an international inquiry, which may lead to some kind of censure happening. That would probably have to go under UN auspices. Now, China might veto it, but the minute they vetoed something like that, you'd have to ask serious questions about what action you'll take in response. Because for a country to say, no, we don't want to know what actually happened internationally, that tells you something, doesn't it, Mike, about why they might want to cover that up.
Well, exactly.
So it would seem a very unusual approach to take to actually veto the request for an inquiry. And then, of course, you've got a whole range of international organizations that you can go to try and get redress and to try and see if China's broken rules. The World Health Organization itself, of course, has got rules. Did China breach them? You'd have to make a case, obviously. Can you go to the International Court of Justice in The Hague and ask for things there? We saw yesterday the Indians have taken a formal complaint to the Human Rights Council of the UN, complaining about what China has done. And in Germany this week, it was very interesting, a major newspaper, published a bill they say that the Chinese, in their view, owe Germany for this. So the movement is building, I think, and around the world people are saying, why should we be the ones who have to clean up the mess that was caused by someone else?
Yes, no, quite right. I don't remember if anything like this happened after Chernobyl, but maybe you can enlighten me. But certainly, even if you put to one side the number of deaths that this has caused, the amount of financial damage that it's done to the world is also prodigious.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a devastating pandemic. It's been devastating in health terms, obviously. It's been devastating and will continue to be devastating for many years in economic terms. And the basic facts are, if you, just on a normal level, on a justice level, if you make a mistake, you have to pay compensation for it. There's no get-out-of-jail-free card because it's such a massive mistake that, I can't do it, it's too big. The reality is, everyone knows there's a restorative principle in justice. You do something, you have to pay to sort it out or suffer some other sanction for it. This is no different. We have a clear route of transmission. We have a clear route of infection that's spread out of China, regardless of where you think it started. We all agree it started in China. The answer, therefore, has to be, what is China going to do to compensate the world for the damage it has allowed to be unleashed upon it?
Yes, interesting that you say that, actually, because it's, one, true, but also you would expect China to be able to give you the answer to that now, wouldn't you? Did it come from a lab, or did it come from a wet market, or was it a combination of the two things that I've also heard a version of?
Yeah, exactly. A further demand to say to the Chinese, look, you need to open up your facilities so we can find out exactly what's gone on. And I'm sorry to say, we cannot trust what the Chinese are telling us. You'll have seen just last week, for example, they magically increased the proportion, the sort of the death count, mortality count in Wuhan by a very round 50% figure, which was curious in itself.
Well, exactly.
But,
I mean, if you're like me, I imagine you're not buying that they had fewer deaths than almost every other country in Western Europe.
Well, exactly. How can a country of that size, where the virus was running amok for so long, I mean, they had a mass banquet where tens of thousands of people were attending, before they shut the city down.
Right.
You can't tell me that this virus has had such a limited effect. But we don't know the truth, of course, because the Chinese are the ones giving the figures, not anyone else.
Right. And what's your sense of our future relationship? I mean, lots of people have talked about why we should not be getting into bed with Huawei, and certainly why the government should not be looking ahead to going forward with that deal. Do you see that as being a problem now?
Yeah, I think actually we asked a very specific question about Huawei, and now more Brits oppose it than support it. 40% of British adults oppose it, so a plurality oppose allowing Huawei to get involved. That's a big figure already. And I think people are looking at this and going, we've got a partner here, a trading partner, who we cannot trust. We cannot trust their information flow. We know there have been other big problems in the past with intellectual theft, with security breaches, with, of course, human rights abuses in China and of course, China's aggressive stance in its neighborhood. Is this the country we really want to be embedded with? And I stress that, embedded with it.
Yes.
Because a lot of our sort of supply chains now are embedded in China. And that is a huge problem when it comes to crises.
Well, that is definitely something that we suffered from as well, because before the coronavirus kind of got here, if you like, we were already suffering from shortages of things because we rely on China for so much stuff. And apparently one of the things is PPE. One of the things is hand sanitizer bottles, because people were making hand sanitizer, but they couldn't get the bottles because the bottles are made in China. Yeah,
I mean, this is the effect, I suppose, of globalization. We have followed a policy. And broadly, we've done all right by it in terms of economically as a country. There have been winners and losers, obviously, in that. But we've allowed consciously this shipping out of our capabilities abroad. And as a result, you now see the negatives of that in a crisis situation. But it doesn't just have to be a crisis situation, Mike. Let's imagine at some point in the future, we have a dispute with the Chinese over something, maybe over Hong Kong, maybe over something else. What if the Chinese turn around and say, fine, we're cutting your supplies of X, Y, and Z. I mean, these could be crucial things, for example, mobile phone batteries, things like that.
Yeah.
What are we going to do in that context? We're going to go and roll over because we'll have no choice but to do that. That is not a sensible national security strategy for any country, even though we do, of course, want diverse trade and to promote economic prosperity.
Yeah. And what about the role of China in the building of things like nuclear plants and all of that? Because, again, that's something that we've been supposedly trained up for.
Well, you saw the debate about Hinkley Point, about the Chinese element within that. again, as with Huawei, there are strong national security concerns about allowing companies that may have state links or may be susceptible to pressure from state organizations into your critical infrastructure in this country. The idea, for example, that the Chinese government could interfere with a plant which has Chinese input is a very real one. There's nothing to stop the Chinese state from pressuring companies to do what it wants. In fact, it's a criminal offence in China to not do what the government wants in certain aspects, for example, intelligence sharing. I mean, they could always extend the law to other matters as well. So as a result, you are leaving yourself open, are you not, to interference from a state actor abroad who may not have the same interests as you.
Yes. Well, almost certainly doesn't have the same interest as us and has possibly stranger bedfellows that we don't know anything about as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, because the information flow is so restricted, because there is no freedom of reporting from within China and the things are so well controlled, we have no sense of what China's real views may be on X, Y, and Z subjects. And that, of course, leaves us very susceptible. And why other countries have gone, like the Americans and others have gone, we cannot have a Chinese component in national security because it's too dangerous.
Absolutely right. Dr. Alan Mendoza, thank you very much indeed, from the Henry Jackson Society, Executive Director. I mean, there is more and more pressure now being brought to bear on the powers that be that something must be done about China. They cannot just simply continue as if nothing has happened, because clearly, you know, the entire world has been affected by this, not just financially, but medically as well. Millions of people have died as a result of this virus getting out, and it's just simply not good enough to go, oh, well, you know, that was 2020 for you. Now it's 2021. Let's forget about it and just carry on as we were. I don't think so. This is Talk Radio.